I drove 2 hours to reach my villa in Tahoe. But what I found that evening was nothing I could have imagined. My son laughed while giving away my villa to his wife's family, declaring with a cold certainty, "You don't belong here anymore, Mother." They settled in as if it had always been theirs, yet what they never understood was that the house itself had my surprise waiting for them. They would never forget. I never thought the day of his wedding would be the moment I was truly seen, the moment I learned to live as myself. Remember to like and subscribe to stay with me for more grandma life stories, where the heart speaks louder than the pain. My name is Joanna Whitmore. I am 67 years old, a widow for nearly a decade, and the mother of one son who once held all my love and all my trust. The villa by Lake Tahoe was built from my late husband's hands and dreams. It was not just a property. It was a memory woven into every beam, every stone, every quiet evening by the water. I thought it would be the place I would go whenever I needed peace, whenever grief pressed too heavy. But that evening showed me peace can be stolen, and grief can turn into fire. When I pulled into the wide gravel driveway, I was startled to see Daniel and Lydia sitting on the front terrace. They were relaxed, sipping wine, laughing like carefree hosts. I slowed the car, confusion sweeping over me. They weren't supposed to be here. This house was never theirs to begin with. I opened the car door with a thud that echoed too loud in the still mountain air. Daniel rose slowly, brushing off his slacks as if welcoming a guest, not his mother. Lydia leaned against the railing with the elegance of someone who had already claimed her territory. My heart tightened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I quickened my pace, passing them without a word. Lydia smirked as I brushed by, her gaze sharp, almost mocking. Inside, my breath caught. The house I knew, my house, had vanished. The old armchair where James, my husband, used to sit with his evening tea, gone. The embroidered rug Caroline, my best friend from church, had given me as a wedding gift, gone. The wall once lined with family photographs was bare, replaced with glossy modern art that meant nothing. Even the scent was different. Instead of cedarwood polish, there was the heavy perfumed smell of wine and new leather. I stumbled into the living room, each step heavier than the last. "Excuse me, what is happening here?" There they were again, Daniel, Lydia, and with them, Gregory and Marlene, Lydia's parents. Gregory's silver hair was slicked back, his shoes polished to a shine. He sat sprawled as if he had earned this comfort. Marlene, draped in silk, looked up at me with a smile too polite to be kind. In that moment, they all seemed to be characters in a play, rehearsed, sitting in my home as if it had always been theirs. Daniel tilted his head, his voice honeyed but hollow. "Mom, you hardly come here anymore. It is wasted space. Lydia's parents could truly make it shine again. Isn't it better this way?" His words floated in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating, hard to ignore. I could not answer. My eyes lingered on the table. There, a glass of red wine rested directly on the cedar surface. James and I had sanded by hand the summer before he died. No coaster, no care, just entitlement. Gregory raised his glass in a mock salute. "We are grateful, Joanna, truly. We will take good care of this place." He said it with the tone of a man who had already closed a deal, a man who thought his courtesy was generosity. Marlene shifted her shawl, eyes scanning the curtains, the cushions, every detail, as if she were redesigning it in her head. A polite smile formed, but behind it was a hunger to possess. And then Daniel looked at me. No hesitation, no guilt, just a flat certainty. "Mother, you don't belong here anymore. This villa is theirs now." Lydia touched his arm, her lips curling into a quiet smile of victory. Gregory leaned back, satisfied. Marlene crossed her legs and nodded slightly, as if to confirm the verdict. I felt the weight of silence pressing down on me. They were waiting for me to fight, to plead, to beg. Instead, I let the corners of my lips rise into the faintest of smiles. Not surrender, but something sharper. They mistook it for weakness. They thought I had finally given in. But inside, a different voice spoke. I had spent years grieving, years letting them believe I was fragile. That night, standing in my own home stripped of my memories, I decided they would never forget what they had done, and they would never forget what was about to come. I turned toward the door, each step deliberate. Behind me, I heard Daniel's laugh, carefree, mocking, echoing against the walls. It followed me out into the cool mountain evening. The villa no longer felt warm, no longer held the gentle touch of my husband's presence. I stood in the center of the living room, my eyes moving from one unfamiliar object to another. The armchair James once called his throne had been replaced by a sleek leather recliner. The rug, the photos, the bookshelves with our family albums, all gone. In their place stood a hollow version of luxury, curated to impress rather than to remember. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep still. Daniel rose from the couch, glass of wine in hand, and smiled as though nothing were amiss. "Ha-ha, Mom, you see that? This place was wasted. Now it has life again." His tone was syrupy, rehearsed, as if he had practiced it in front of a mirror. I did not answer. My eyes scanned the walls where my husband's laughter once echoed. Lydia leaned forward, tossing her hair with deliberate grace. "I told Daniel it needed a fresh touch. The way you had it was quaint. But look now, doesn't it breathe sophistication?" I felt the sting, but I stayed quiet. Gregory crossed one leg over the other, lifting his glass lazily. "Finally," he said with satisfaction. "This villa looks like it belongs to people who know how to use it." Marlene chuckled, her voice a thin blade wrapped in velvet. "Yes, Joanna, it was charming in its old way. But homes should reflect progress, not nostalgia. We'll make this home truly worthy." My hand brushed the wooden table where James once rested his coffee. Now a wet ring from Gregory's wine glass stained the surface. I straightened my back, my voice steady. "You speak as if it is yours." Daniel laughed lightly, the kind of laugh meant to dismiss rather than acknowledge. Well, technically it should be. "You barely come here anymore. It makes no sense for it to sit empty when it could host real gatherings, real life. Lydia's parents deserve that." "Deserve?" I repeated, my voice sharp. Lydia's eyes glinted. "Yes, they've sacrificed much for us. This house is too much for you alone, but for us, it is a place where family can grow. Isn't that what Dad would have wanted?" The mention of James struck me like a slap, but before I could speak, Gregory leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Your husband left you comfort, Joanna. That was his job. Now it's Daniel's job to make sure that comfort benefits everyone, including us." Marlene nodded, her lips curling into a smile that failed to reach her eyes. "Think of it as expanding the family, dear." A villa this size should not be wasted on solitude. I felt the word slice through me. Expanding the family. Wasted on solitude. They spoke as if my life had expired, as if my years of building, loving, and grieving counted for nothing. I shifted my gaze to Daniel. "And you agree with this?" He set his glass down, leaned close, and spoke low enough for the others to pause in satisfaction. "Mother, you don't belong here anymore. This villa is theirs now." The room fell silent, the sentence hanging like smoke above us. Lydia placed her hand on his arm, pride written across her face. Gregory raised his glass again in mock celebration. Marlene tilted her head, studying my reaction like a spectator at a play. I let the silence linger, then I asked, "Did you ever consider asking me?" Daniel's smirk widened. "You would have said no. Sometimes decisions must be made for the greater good." "You'll thank us later, thank you," I echoed slowly. "For erasing your father's memory? For stripping this home of everything that made it ours?" Gregory waved a dismissive hand. "Memories are for the weak. Walls need strength, not sentiment. This house will finally stand for something. Marlene's voice followed, sharp and dismissive. You are clinging to ghosts, Joanna. It is unhealthy at your age. Daniel and Lydia are rescuing this place from decay. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced my expression into calm. And what am I then? Decay? Daniel's smile faltered for the briefest second, but Lydia filled the space. You're comfortable. But you don't need a villa. You need simplicity. Leave the grand things to those who can keep them alive. I looked at her, at all of them. The arrogance, the entitlement, the absolute certainty that they were right. Inside, a storm raged, but outside I gave them only stillness. You seem to have everything figured out, I said quietly. Yes, we do, Daniel replied firmly. It's time to move forward, Mom. You will see. This is best. Marlene crossed her legs again, satisfied. Exactly. We are not villains, Joanna. We are visionaries, and visionaries know when to claim what is necessary. Gregory added with a thin smile. Consider this the beginning of a new chapter. You should be proud your villa will host a family worthy of it. Their words dripped like poison, each one tightening the air around me. I walked toward the window, looking out at the lake that had once brought me peace. The water reflected the fading sunlight, but inside the villa the shadows deepened. You speak of worth, I said softly, turning back to face them. But worth is not measured in possessions. It is measured in respect, and today I see none. Daniel stiffened, but Lydia clapped her hands lightly. Mother, don't be dramatic. This is a blessing. You'll come to accept it. Gregory and Marlene laughed quietly as though the matter was settled. They poured more wine, their bodies relaxed, their voices carefree. Outside, the breeze rippled through the pines, indifferent to the betrayal happening inside these walls. I stood there, letting their laughter echo, letting their words brand themselves into my mind. I would not forget, and I knew, neither would they. Daniel finally dropped the mask. He set his glass down with a thud and said it without hesitation. Mother, you don't belong here anymore. This villa is theirs now. The words cut the air clean. Lydia leaned forward, placing her wine on the polished table. A crooked smile slid across her lips. It's the truth, Joanna. A house like this deserves people who can actually bring it to life, not someone clinging to memories. Marlene's voice joined, sharper than a knife. A woman alone doesn't need all this space. It's indulgent. Families need it, not widows. Gregory chuckled, raising his glass like a toast. You should be grateful. You'll still be part of our gatherings if you want. Isn't that enough? I let silence settle. My gaze traveled from one smug face to another. They expected protest, tears, collapse. Instead, I curved my lips into a thin smile, a smile with no warmth. They mistook it for surrender. Lydia relaxed back into her seat. Daniel exhaled as if a battle had been won. Gregory and Marlene smirked, believing the deed was done. I turned, walked toward the kitchen, and said nothing more. The kitchen had always been mine. Every holiday meal, every birthday cake, every quiet evening of soup when James came in, late from work. It all began here. I pulled out the cast iron skillet, the old oak cutting board still bearing the scars of years of use, and I lit the stove. The hiss of flame filled the silence. Daniel's voice drifted in, casual. Mom, what are you doing? We already ordered food. You don't have to. I didn't ask what you needed, I cut in without turning. My knife hit the board rhythmically. Chop, chop, chop. Vegetables lined up neatly, precise, defiant. Lydia laughed softly, whispering to her mother, She's trying to prove a point. Marlene answered in that false, sweet tone, Let her. Cooking keeps her occupied, I let them whisper. The skillet sizzled as garlic met hot oil, the sharp scent filling the air. Soon chicken browned, potatoes crisped, herbs cracked under the heat. The villa smelled alive again, but not for them. Gregory wandered into the doorway, leaning on the frame with his glass. "Well, at least we'll eat well tonight." "I'll take mine medium rare. Thank you, I didn't lift my eyes." "You'll take nothing." The knife stopped. The skillet hissed. Silence dropped heavy. "What do you mean?" Gregory scoffed. "I said, you'll take nothing. This kitchen is mine. This table is mine. You may sit in my chairs, stain my floors, pretend this house is yours. But tonight you will not touch a single plate I set down." Daniel stepped forward, voice firm. "Mother, don't be unreasonable. We're trying to build a family evening. Stop making it hostile." I turned, finally meeting his eyes. "Hostile? You strip my home of its soul. You throw out my memories, and you dare to say I am the one being hostile." Lydia raised her chin. "Enough dramatics. We are family. This is still your house in name, but in spirit it belongs to us. Don't make yourself small by refusing to join us." I plated the food, one dish after another, rich and fragrant. Roasted chicken, golden brown. Potatoes glazed with rosemary. A salad bright with citrus. I carried them to the table, set them down carefully, deliberately. Daniel pulled a chair, gesturing for everyone. "Come on, let's eat before it gets cold." I placed one final dish, then stood tall at the head of the table. "Sit where you like. Laugh, drink your wine. But know this, no one eats tonight but me." Their faces froze. Gregory's laugh broke the stillness. "Is this a joke?" Marlene's smile slipped. "Joanna, that's childish." Lydia's voice sharpened. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said, my voice even. "This meal is not a welcome. It is a reminder. This kitchen, this stove, these recipes, they belong to me, not to you, not to any of you. You may have replaced my furniture. You may have erased my photos. But you will not erase this." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're humiliating yourself." "No, Daniel," I answered calmly. "I am showing you what humiliation feels like." For a long moment, no one spoke. The aroma of food filled the room, cruel in its invitation. I pulled out one chair for myself, sat down and began to eat, slowly, intentionally, each bite loud in the silence, knife against plate, fork tapping, chew after chew. They stared, fuming. Gregory shifted, ready to speak, but Lydia grabbed his arm. Daniel's fists clenched against the table. Marlene's face flushed, fury simmering under her fragile smile. I did not rush. I savored every bite, letting them feel the weight of exclusion. They wanted ownership. I gave them distance. They wanted to claim my table. I denied them presence. Daniel finally snapped, slamming his hand against the table. "Enough! This is absurd. You can't act like this forever." I set down my fork, dabbed my lips with a cloth napkin, and looked at him steadily. "Forever? Number. Just tonight. But remember this night, Daniel. Remember how it feels to sit in a home you claim as yours and still be a guest." He stood, his face red. "You're playing games, Mother." "No," I replied, my voice low, cutting. "You started the game when you said I don't belong here. Tonight and more, you will never forget what is happening in this house." The words landed heavy. Lydia swallowed hard. Gregory muttered something under his breath. Marlene looked away. I rose from the table, gathering my plate. "Enjoy your wine." "That is all you will have." I walked back to the kitchen, leaving them in silence. Behind me, the villa seemed to breathe with me, strong, defiant, still mine. I drove back to Sacramento that night, headlights cutting through the dark highway. My mind wasn't swirling with grief anymore. It was sharpening into something else. By the time I reached the edge of the city, I already knew who to see. Emily opened her door in sweatpants, earbuds dangling from her neck. My niece had always been the kind of girl who treated wires and codes like playthings. She raised her eyebrows the moment she saw me standing there with a face that needed no explanation. "Aunt Jo," she said, pulling me in, "you look like you've seen a ghost." I sat down at her cluttered desk. Circuit boards, screwdrivers, and half-built gadgets surrounded us. Not a ghost, I said evenly. Something worse. My own blood, Emily leaned back in her chair. Daniel again? I nodded. He gave away the villa. To Lydia's parents, in my face, told me I don't belong there anymore. Her jaw dropped, then twisted into a crooked smirk. So they think they can just move in like they own it? They already have, I answered. Emily chuckled darkly. Then let's test their courage. I watched her fingers fly across her keyboard, screens lighting up with diagrams of networks and schematics. Do you remember? I asked quietly, that your Uncle James had a security system put in before he passed? Of course, she said. Uncle Whitmore was old school but smart. Cameras in every corner, sensors wired into the walls. I've patched that thing for you twice already. I leaned closer. Can you take it further? Her eyes lit up. How far are we talking? As far as it takes for them to understand this house is not theirs. I don't want brute force. I want intelligence. I want them to feel unwelcome in every breath they take inside those walls. Emily tapped her chin, thinking, then grinned. A haunted house built on silicon and steel. I can make the lights strobe, project shadows on the walls, trigger faucets to flood without touching a handle, even whisper their names through the vents. Can it be controlled remotely? Easily, she said, from your phone or a tablet. And I can build a backup battery hidden in the basement so they can't just cut the power. The system will run for days. For the first time that day, I let out something close to a laugh. Good. Then we'll give them a welcome they'll never forget. She rolled her chair toward a stack of gear. Small projectors, strips of LED lights, speakers no larger than a thumb. These are all off-the-shelf parts, she explained. Perfectly legal. But combine them right, and you've got psychological warfare. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Emily, this stays between us. Her grin widened. You have no idea how badly I've wanted to run an experiment like this. Consider it my revenge gift. The next morning, we loaded her SUV with cases of equipment. Driving back to Tahoe, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't storming into battle. I was building one. The villa stood quiet when we arrived. From the outside, it looked untouched, serene by the water. But inside, the air still carried the faint smell of Gregory's cologne and Marlene's perfume. They had left for the week, but their presence lingered like smoke. Emily wasted no time. Let's start at the entryway, she said, unpacking her tools. She mounted the first motion sensor above the front door. When they walk in, the lights will flicker, like the house is rejecting them. She tucked speakers behind the curtains, wiring them to a small control hub. These will play whispers, short, fragmented sentences, things that get under the skin. You shouldn't be here. Get out. Leave. I stood in the middle of the living room, watching. And the shadows? Emily pointed to a compact projector in her hand. Once they pass a certain sensor, this throws tall, warped figures across the walls. Perfect for when they're alone in a hallway, we moved upstairs. Emily drilled discrete holes for more sensors, threading wires with the precision of a surgeon. Bathrooms next, she said, grinning. She tapped into the plumbing system, connecting valves to remote relays. Picture this. They step into the shower, and suddenly every faucet in the house bursts on. Pure chaos. I allowed myself a thin smile. They won't last a night. By afternoon, the villa was no longer just brick and wood. It had become a machine, silent, waiting, armed with tricks invisible to the naked eye. Emily handed me a sleek black tablet. This is your control panel. Each room is mapped. You can trigger sequences manually or let the sensors run automatic. You'll see the feeds live here. I held it, the weight solid in my hands. James would have loved this, I said quietly. Emily's grin softened. Then let's dedicate it to him. Uncle James's house isn't just standing, it's fighting back. We tested the system. Emily walked through the hallway and the lights pulsed erratically. A shadow glided across the wall, tall and shapeless. The speakers hissed, then whispered, "Leave now." She flinched despite knowing what to expect. Damn, even when you know it's fake, it hits. I nodded. Good. That's what I want. Night fell. From the porch, I looked out at the lake, calm and golden in the setting sun. Behind me, the villa hummed quietly, its hidden systems alive, waiting. Emily packed up her remaining gear. "It's ready, Aunt Jo." They won't see it coming. I exhaled slowly. Neither did I. But now they will learn. As we drove back toward Sacramento, I kept the tablet on my lap. The villa's camera feeds flickered one by one. Entryway, living room, upstairs hall, each room waiting like soldiers standing guard. It was no longer just a home. It was my ally, my fortress, my voice in the dark when I chose silence. And when Daniel and his in-laws came back, they would find out the hard way that this villa did not welcome strangers. The morning after Emily and I finished the villa's defenses, I sat at my kitchen table in Sacramento with a cup of black coffee cooling beside me. The tablet that controlled the house was propped against the sugar jar, glowing with quiet vigilance. The feeds were still, but something gnawed at me. The house could scare them. It could push them out. But fear alone wasn't enough. Fear fades. Paper does not. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown. Mark Sullivan's office was tucked into the corner of a mid-rise building near the courthouse. I had known Mark for 20 years, back when James and I bought our first property. He had the same reputation then as he did now. Precise, unshakable, the kind of lawyer who made opponents regret opening their mouths. When I stepped into his office, he looked up from a stack of briefs. His gray eyes narrowed, then softened. "Joanna Whitmore. It's been a long time." "It has," I said, lowering myself into the chair across from his desk. "I need your help." Mark leaned back, folding his hands together. Not the social call I hoped for then. "What's happened?" I met his gaze. "My son gave away my villa, handed it to his wife's family as if it were his to give. He looked me in the eye and told me I don't belong there anymore." For a moment, Mark didn't speak. Then he gave a short, humorless laugh. "Daniel, is it? I remember drafting his trust fund when he turned 21. Always thought he had more charm than backbone." "He doesn't need backbone," I said flatly. "He has entitlement." Mark's expression turned serious. "Do they have any documents? Any signatures from you?" "No, just their audacity. They moved in, replaced my furniture, and declared the villa theirs." Mark exhaled slowly. "Then they're squatters dressed in silk." "Still, squatters can create a mess if not handled properly." He pulled a thick file from the cabinet behind him and laid it on the desk. My name was stamped on the tab. "Here's the original purchase deed. You and James bought it outright 12 years ago. Title is clean. No liens, no co-owners. On paper, it's untouchable." "Paper doesn't scare them," I said. He opened the file, scanning. "Then we make the paper sharper. Transfer the villa into an irrevocable trust. Better yet, donate it to an organization with standing, something they can't touch with lawsuits or tantrums. I'd suggest the Veterans Relief Foundation. James worked with them, didn't he?" I nodded. Memories of my husband's handshakes at fundraisers flickered through my mind. Yes, he believed in their work. Mark tapped his pen on the desk. "We draft a charitable gift deed. You add a clause for lifetime access. That way, you keep the right to live there, visit, use it as you see fit. But legally, it won't be yours anymore, which means it won't be Daniel's either. No lawyer, no judge, no manipulative daughter-in-law can claw it back." The clarity in his voice was like a steel rod settling into my spine. "How long will it take?" I asked. "For a basic draft?" "Hours. Recording it with the county? 2 days at most. But once I start the paperwork, the clock is ticking. If Daniel tries anything, changing locks, filing false claims, your position is still superior, but speed matters. Start now," I said. Mark's eyes searched mine for a moment, then he nodded. All right. But Joanna, once you sign, it's permanent. You'll never be able to sell it, pass it down, or change your mind. I straightened in my chair. I'm not looking to change my mind. I'm looking to keep it safe. Permanently. He picked up his phone and buzzed his assistant. Bring me the Whitmore Villa file, charitable transfer templates, and a notary. Priority. He set the receiver down, then leaned forward. You've been generous with your family for too long. I remember James once said, you never told Daniel no. That ends today. I let a faint smile curve my lips. It ended the moment he told me I don't belong. The assistant arrived with forms, sliding them onto the desk. Mark walked me through every line. The property description, the grantor clause, the irrevocable condition, the access rights. His voice was calm, efficient, almost surgical. At one point, he looked up. Do you want Daniel notified? No, I said. I want him surprised. Mark scribbled notes in the margin. Then we'll file it quietly. By the time he even suspects, the deed will already be public record. The notary set her stamp on the corner of the page. The sound was crisp, final. Mark stacked the documents neatly, sliding them into a folder. Congratulations, Joanna. As of this week, that villa belongs to the Veterans Relief Foundation. You, however, will have keys no one else can touch. I stood, gripping the folder. The weight felt different than the tablet Emily had given me. This wasn't a weapon that could flicker out. This was armor. Thank you, Mark, I said. He offered a thin smile. Don't thank me yet. Families don't take kindly to being cut out. Brace yourself for their fury. I already have, I replied. As I walked out of his office, the late afternoon sun hit the courthouse windows, scattering light across the pavement. I felt no trembling, no second-guessing. The villa was beyond their reach now, and when they tried to claw at it, they would find themselves bloodied on paper walls, stronger than steel. That night, I set the folder on my desk beside the glowing tablet. One was law, the other was theater. Together, they were justice. And Daniel would soon learn that his mother wasn't the one who didn't belong. I had spent the past week slipping in and out of the villa under the pretense of quiet maintenance. Every visit gave me time to check the sensors, test the projectors, and confirm the hidden system Emily had wired. The villa looked calm, its cedar siding warm against the Tahoe sun, but beneath that stillness was a machine waiting for the right audience. That audience arrived on a bright Saturday afternoon. From my seat by the lake's edge, I heard the crunch of tires against gravel. I didn't have to look, but I did. A silver SUV rolled up the driveway, trunk stuffed, rear seats crammed with luggage. Daniel stepped out first, his stride exaggerated, shoulders squared like a man who had just signed a deed. Lydia followed, sunglasses perched high, her hand sweeping the air as if she already owned the horizon. Gregory and Marlene unfolded themselves from the back seat, stretching as though they'd just arrived at their summer home. I stayed on the dock, letting the tablet rest on my lap. The cameras blinked awake on their own, capturing every step. Daniel hoisted 2 bags, glanced toward me, and smirked. See? We're finally moving in. You should thank us for keeping this place alive. I rose slowly, brushing pine dust from my palms. Enjoy your stay, I said, nothing more. Lydia laughed, a short, sharp sound. Finally, a house fit for us, she declared, her heels clacking against the porch as she pulled open the door. I followed behind them just far enough to watch. Inside, Lydia's voice carried through the living room. The light is perfect. We'll put a bigger mirror here, replace that rug with something modern. She ran her fingers across the edge of the table, like a judge deciding its fate. Marlene appeared with a bouquet of white lilies she must have brought in her tote. She placed them squarely on the mantel, nudging aside the smaller vase of pressed wildflowers I had kept since last spring. Fresh blooms make a home, she said without looking at me, not dried stems clinging to memory. Gregory uncorked a bottle of Merlot, letting the cork fall to the floor. To new beginnings, he he said smugly, pouring himself a glass before settling into James's old armchair. He swirled the wine lazily. Yes, this feels more worthy already. Daniel set the bags down and gestured broadly. Look at it, Mom. Doesn't it feel alive now? All that old furniture weighed it down. Now it breathes. I let my eyes travel over the leather chairs, the crystal glasses they had brought in, the lilies choking the scent of pine. The silence stretched until Daniel chuckled, as if he had won. Really, he said, you should be grateful. I stepped further into the room, my shoes sinking into the rug I hadn't chosen. The air was heavy with their perfume of ownership, their arrogance filling every corner. Yet I kept my face neutral. You've made yourselves comfortable, I said evenly. Lydia flipped her hair back, tilting her chin high. Why wouldn't we? You never use this place. We can make it shine again. Gregory raised his glass toward me in a mock toast. Here's to letting go, Joanna. Some women cling too long to what should have been passed on years ago. Marlene smirked, adjusting the lilies until their stems snapped against the vase. Don't worry, we'll treat it as if it were ours. In time, it will be their voices tangled in the air like smoke, each word designed to erase me. I let them talk, let them believe. Then I gave the smallest nod, the one that makes the arrogant believe they've triumphed. Enjoy your stay, I repeated softly. Daniel grinned at the supposed surrender. Lydia clasped his arm, her eyes shining with triumph. Gregory leaned back, smug. Marlene exhaled, satisfied. I turned away without another word, walked out to the porch, and let the screen door shut behind me. The lake was calm, golden light pooling on its surface. My feet carried me back to the dock where the tablet waited. Behind me, the voices rose again, Lydia calling for more wine glasses, Marlene fussing with the curtains, Gregory bragging about the fireplace, Daniel laughing loud and careless. None of them noticed the faint red indicator light blinking above the entryway door. None of them knew the villa wasn't the empty shell they imagined. It had teeth now. I sat back down on the dock, tablet steady in my lap, and watched the water shift in the breeze. They thought they had claimed my house, carved me out, and replaced memory with their shallow version of elegance. But the villa knew better. The villa was ready. Soon, very soon, they would learn what it meant to settle into someone else's home uninvited. That night, the lake outside was silent, but the villa was waiting. I sat on the dock with the tablet in my hands, the camera feeds glowing faintly against the dark. Inside, they had poured themselves another round of wine, laughing too loud, boasting too long. Midnight came, and I touched the first command. The chandelier in the living room flickered, once, twice, then began to strobe like lightning. Lydia froze mid-sentence. Did you see that? Marlene glanced upward. It's probably old wiring. Gregory's laugh was shaky. Then your mother should have upgraded sooner. Daniel waved it off, though his eyes narrowed. Relax, it's nothing. I tapped again. From the upstairs hallway, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps echoed. One step, another. Then silence. Marlene clutched her shawl. Someone's upstairs. Daniel rose quickly. Stay here. I'll check. He grabbed a flashlight and strode toward the staircase. The moment his foot hit the second step, the sound stopped. He searched every room, opening doors, peering into closets. Nothing. When he returned, he forced a smile. See? Empty. But as soon as he turned his back, the steps began again, heavier this time. Gregory shot to his feet. There! You heard that? Daniel spun, shouting up the stairwell. Who's there? No answer, just the creak of wood and the hollow echo of retreating footsteps. Lydia tried to hold composure. It's an old house settling. That's all. Her voice wavered, betraying her face that had gone pale. The bathroom door slammed upstairs. Water gushed suddenly, pipes rattling. Showers burst alive, spraying against tile. The sound thundered down the stairs. Marlene shrieked. "Oh my God, what is happening?" Gregory's glass slipped from his hand and shattered. "That's not the house settling." Daniel grabbed the banister, flashlight beam jerking wildly. "Stay calm. I'll handle it." But when he reached the top landing, every faucet cut off at once. Silence pressed down, thicker than before. He moved from room to room, returning with damp shoes and a clenched jaw. Plumbing issue. Nothing more. Even as he spoke, the living room speakers hissed. A whisper seeped through the vents, soft at first, then growing distinct. "Leave now, you don't belong here," Marlene screamed, covering her ears. It spoke. It spoke. Lydia's mask cracked, her lips trembling. This can't be real." Gregory pressed himself against the wall, his chest heaving. "This house is cursed." Daniel shouted over the noise. "It's interference." Speakers. Wiring. Something explainable. But the lights cut out, plunging the villa into total darkness. The only glow came from the fireplace, where shadows stretched impossibly tall across the walls. Distorted. Figures loomed, swaying, twisting as though alive. Gregory stumbled back. "They're in the room with us." Lydia clutched Daniel's arm. "Make it stop." Marlene collapsed into a chair, whispering prayers. Daniel's voice faltered for the first time. This can't be real." I switched the command again. The lights returned, steady and calm, as though nothing had happened. The whispers stopped. The water was silent. The shadows vanished. They all stood frozen, breathing hard. Gregory pointed a trembling finger. "Don't tell me that was wiring." "Don't you dare," Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, searching for an explanation. Maybe the system James put in, it's malfunctioning." But even he didn't believe it. His voice cracked, his confidence unraveling. Lydia tried to pull him toward the door. "We should leave, just for tonight." He shook his head violently. "No, if we leave, she wins. This is our house now." I almost laughed from where I sat by the water. He still thought this was about victory. Inside, the villa waited in silence, patient and cruel. And they, for all their arrogance, had only survived the first hour. From my desk in Sacramento, the tablet glowed in the dim light of my study. Each camera feed showed them unraveling inside the villa. The arrogance they carried in by daylight was gone now, replaced by panic. Lydia clutched her purse tight against her chest. "I'm not staying another minute in this house." Marlene's voice was shrill, nearly breaking. "It whispers, it walks, God help us, it moves on its own." Gregory bent to snatch up his shoes, fumbling as his hands shook. "Pack everything, now." Before it starts again, Daniel tried to keep his voice steady, but the edge betrayed him. "Calm down. Everyone calm down. It's nothing we can't explain." The chandelier flickered above them, throwing their shadows in jagged angles across the walls. That was all it took. "Forget calm," Lydia snapped, yanking open the hallway closet and dragging out her suitcase. Clothes spilled across the floor. She stuffed them back in blindly, zipping until the teeth strained. Gregory knocked over a lamp, cursing under his breath as the bulb shattered. Marlene darted from room to room, pulling coats, handbags, anything within reach. Their movements collided, frantic, as if the walls themselves were pushing them out. "Watch it," Daniel barked when Gregory's elbow slammed into him. "Then get out of my way," Gregory shot back, dragging his duffel toward the door. The front camera showed them bursting into the foyer all at once, tripping over luggage, stepping on each other's feet. Lydia shoved Marlene aside to grab her shoes. Marlene shrieked, shoving back. "This house doesn't want us," she cried. "Can't you feel it? Every second we stay, it hates us more." "Shut up." Daniel's voice cracked. He clutched his keys like a lifeline, face drenched with sweat. "We're leaving, that's all." I touched the screen gently. Upstairs, a door slammed shut with violent force. They all froze in the foyer, hearts pounding so loudly I could hear it through the speakers. Gregory's eyes darted toward the staircase. "It's following us!" Another slam, then another, doors one by one shutting themselves, echoing like gunfire through the halls. That broke them. "Go, go!" Lydia screamed, dragging her suitcase across the polished floor. They barreled through the doorway into the night, tripping down the steps, bags dragging behind them. The porch lights sputtered above, blinking in time with their chaos. Outside camera. Gregory dropped his duffel on the gravel, swearing as he scrambled to lift it again. Marlene clutched her shawl so tightly it nearly tore. Lydia fought with the suitcase wheels stuck in the stones, her breath ragged. Daniel shoved past all of them, unlocking the SUV with shaking hands. The alarm chirped once. Then, before he could open the door, the horn blared long and loud on its own, headlights flashing wildly. They jumped back as if the car itself had turned against them. "What did you do?" Gregory roared. "I didn't do anything," Daniel snapped, fumbling with the remote. He pressed again and again until finally the lights steadied, the locks clicked open. Get in," Lydia shouted, shoving Marlene toward the back seat. The suitcase jammed between the door and the frame. Lydia kicked it hard, forcing it through, then slammed the door shut. Gregory nearly tripped over his own duffel climbing in. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, fumbling the key into the ignition. His face was tight, lips pressed white. "We're done with this place." Done, I leaned back in my chair, watching their every movement captured in perfect detail. They were nothing like the regal hosts they had pretended to be. No polished charm, no smug superiority, only fear, pure and raw. Through the microphone, I whispered the final line of the night, sending it through the villa's outdoor speakers. Lesson 1. Marlene shrieked inside the car. Gregory cursed under his breath. Lydia spun toward Daniel, eyes wide. "It knows we're leaving!" "Shut up!" Daniel jammed the accelerator. The SUV tore down the gravel drive, spitting rocks into the night. The cameras followed the beams of the headlights until they disappeared around the bend. Then, silence. I exhaled, long and steady. The feeds dimmed to calm stillness, the villa's walls humming softly in victory. They had run like thieves in the night, chased by shadows they couldn't touch, by whispers they couldn't reason with. I closed the tablet, the faintest smile tugging at my lips. Lesson 1, I repeated, this time only for myself. They had thought they were masters of the house. Tonight the house had taught them otherwise. The morning sun should have felt like relief after their long night, but for them it only revealed the cracks in their pride. I watched from Sacramento through the tablet, each camera feed showing them huddled around the living room table, like conspirators caught in their own trap. Gregory slammed his fist down, rattling the wine glasses left from the night before. "We can't just let her get away with this. She terrorized us in our sleep. This is harassment. It's abuse of her own son." Marlene leaned forward, her eyes wide with fury. "Yes, and the press will eat it up. An old woman tormenting her child and his family? I'll call the Tribune today." Headlines like that ruin reputations. Lydia pressed her palms against her temples. "Calm down. Think. If we go public without evidence, she'll flip it back on us. We need something solid." Daniel paced the floor, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. "Evidence? What more do we need? You all saw what happened." Gregory barked a bitter laugh. "We saw lights, shadows, water. Nothing a lawyer can't dismiss as faulty wiring. We need proof she orchestrated it." Daniel stopped pacing, his face twisting with anger. "You think she didn't? Who else could? That woman is cunning. She's been plotting since the moment she smiled that fake smile." Lydia's voice sharpened. "Then prove it, Daniel. March into court and show them what? That your mother scared you with flickering bulbs? You'll look like a fool." The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm talking to you like someone who wants to win," Lydia shot back. "Your pride won't win this." "Documents," will Gregory cut in. "Which brings us to the real problem." "Do you have them?" Daniel's eyes flickered. He hesitated too long. Marlene leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "You don't, do you?" Daniel snapped, slamming his hand against the wall so hard the vase of lilies toppled and shattered. "She never gave me the deed. I asked. I pushed. I waited. She always kept it in her name. She didn't trust me." "Of course she didn't," Gregory muttered. "And now we sit here like fools with nothing in writing, nothing binding." Empty hands, Lydia's face hardened. "So what now?" "We sue her? On what grounds? Emotional distress." Daniel turned on her, eyes blazing. "You think I'll let her humiliate us again? She wants to play games. I'll crush her. I'll drag her name through the mud if I have to." Marlene gasped, clutching her pearls. "She's still your mother." "She stopped being my mother when she locked me out of what's rightfully mine," Daniel roared. "She's my enemy now." The cameras caught every word, every vein throbbing in his forehead. Gregory rubbed his temples. "If we go legal, it will cost us. Lawyers don't work for free, and if she already has something filed, we're sunk." "Then we fight dirty," Daniel hissed. "Report her for elder." "Neglect. Flip the story. Say she abandoned me as a child. Say she manipulates everyone around her. Courts don't need the full truth, only a convincing one." Lydia's voice was low, almost trembling. "Do you even hear yourself?" "You sound desperate." "I am desperate," Daniel snapped, pacing again. "She stripped me of everything. That villa is mine, and I'll burn every bridge to take it back." Marlene's hands shook as she tried to calm him. "Daniel, stop." This rage, it's not helping. But he pulled away, eyes blazing. "Don't you see? She thinks she's clever with her tricks, but she's weak, old, alone. Without that villa, she has nothing, and I'll remind her of it." Gregory snorted. "She had enough strength to scare us out like dogs last night. If that's weakness, I don't want to see her strong." For once, Lydia didn't defend him. She sat back, pale and silent, her confidence shaken. Daniel's chest heaved. He jabbed a finger at them. "You all wanted this. You told me to push, to take what's mine. Now we stand here like cowards. Not me. I'll fight until that villa is in my hands, no matter what it takes." His words echoed through the hollowed living room. The others avoided his gaze, their silence louder than their anger. I sat miles away, the feed still glowing. Their fury had cracked, revealing what lay beneath. Not strategy, not power, but desperation. They had no deed, no proof, no claim, only rage. I whispered to the empty study, a whisper they couldn't hear yet. Desperation is where pride dies. And they were already drowning in it. Mark's office smelled faintly of leather and ink, the shelves lined with casebooks that had outlived many battles. I had asked him to summon them here, all of them together, so no one could twist my words or claim ignorance. When Daniel and Lydia walked in, their expressions carried defiance. Gregory and Marlene followed, their silence bristling with contempt. Mark rose from behind his desk. "Please, have a seat." Daniel didn't bother. He crossed his arms, glaring at me. "So, Mother, what now?" "Another lecture? Another performance?" Mark's calm voice cut him short. "Not a performance. A matter of record." He pulled a thick folder from his drawer and placed it squarely on the desk. "This concerns the Tahoe Villa." Lydia leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Finally. We're here to settle what belongs where." Mark opened the folder, flipping to the deed. A crimson seal stamped the corner. "Mrs. Whitmore has executed an irrevocable transfer. The villa is now the property of the Veterans Relief Foundation." The room went still. Gregory frowned. "What did you just say?" "I said," Mark repeated evenly, "the villa no longer belongs to Joanna Whitmore. It is held in trust by the Veterans Relief Foundation, effective immediately, irrevocable, permanent, untouchable." Daniel's voice exploded. "So you give it to strangers instead of your own son?" I met his rage with steady calm. Family doesn't steal what I have owned. You know that. I chose respect, something you forgot. Lydia slammed her hand on the desk. This is insane. You can't just... Mark cut her off. Yes, she can. And she did. The documents are filed with the county clerk. As of yesterday morning, this building could collapse, and the deed would still outlive it. Legally, there was nothing to contest. Daniel's face burned crimson. You tricked me. You humiliated us. You'd rather hand our legacy to broken soldiers than your own blood? I held his gaze. Your father served with those men. He trusted them with his life. You couldn't even respect his chair. Gregory shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. Marlene pressed her lips together until the color drained. For once, their smugness faltered. Lydia, however, would not let go. Her voice rose to a shriek. You spiteful old woman! You've destroyed our future. Everything we planned, everything we deserved, gone, because you couldn't let go of the past. Mark's voice was sharp. Mrs. Whitmore has acted fully within her rights. If you continue, I'll have to ask you to leave. Lydia turned to Daniel, clutching his arm. Say something. Don't let her do this. But Daniel said nothing. His chest heaved, his fists curled, but no words came. His silence filled the room louder than any outburst. I leaned forward, my voice low but unshakable. You thought you could corner me with arrogance. You thought fear would make me bend. But respect cannot be stolen. It must be given. And you gave me none. Gregory cleared his throat, trying to salvage dignity. This isn't over. We will... Mark's gaze cut him down. It is over. Irrevocable means forever. You may threaten, you may whine, but the law will not move for you. Marlene's eyes darted to the floor. She said nothing. Lydia sank back into her chair, her fury now hollow. Daniel finally lowered his head, the fire in his voice extinguished. For the first time, he had no rebuttal. The silence that followed was suffocating. I let it linger, let them feel the weight of their failure pressing against their pride. Mark closed the folder with a snap. That concludes our business. Unless you wish to embarrass yourselves further in front of the clerk's seal, Gregory stood abruptly, muttering curses under his breath. Marlene rose slowly, eyes wet though no tears fell. Lydia shoved her chair back, her breath ragged, and stormed toward the door. Daniel remained seated for a moment longer, staring at me. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. He turned and walked out without looking back. When the door shut behind them, the office felt lighter. Mark exhaled, shaking his head. I've seen many families fight over property. Few do it with such venom. You made the right choice, Joanna. Painful, but right. I nodded. Once. They wanted a legacy. Now they'll remember this day instead. Mark slid the folder toward me. Keep it. Proof in case they ever try to twist the story. I placed my hand on it, feeling the weight of law thicker than steel. Thank you, Mark. As I left his office, the late light of the city spilled across the street. My steps were steady. Behind me, 4 people carried the burden of their arrogance turned to ash. Ahead of me, the villa stood untouchable, shielded by more than technology now, shielded by the law itself. Daniel slammed the apartment door so hard the frame rattled. The suitcase he dragged behind him toppled halfway across the floor. He kicked it aside, breath ragged, fury spilling out of him like a storm he couldn't control. From the kitchen, Lydia's voice came sharp. Don't slam the door. The neighbors already think we're unstable. He shot her a glare. Unstable? After what your mother said to me in front of that lawyer? After what my own mother did to me? Lydia folded her arms. Your mother protected what was hers. You handed her the victory by not having a single piece of paper in your favor. Gregory appeared in the doorway, his tone dripping disdain. We staked everything on you, Daniel. And what do we have? Nothing. Not a deed, not a claim. Just shame. Marlene added coldly, "We can't even show our faces at the club." "Do you know what people are saying? That we were thrown out like beggars." Daniel's hands trembled. "You think I didn't fight? You think I didn't try?" Gregory stepped closer, jabbing a finger into his chest. "You failed, and we paid the price for your arrogance." Lydia turned away, her voice low but sharp enough to cut. "I told you to get proof." "You didn't. Now all you have is anger, and anger doesn't pay bills." For a moment, Daniel's face twisted between rage and despair. "I'm your son-in-law. Doesn't that count for something?" Marlene's laugh was bitter. "It counted when you had a villa. Now, you're just another man with nothing." Gregory shook his head, stepping back. "Sort yourself out, Daniel. Don't drag us down with you." They left him standing in the living room, chest heaving, hands clenched. The silence after the door shut on them was heavier than any insult. He slumped into a chair, the weight of their words pressing hard. His mind replayed the moment in Mark's office, the crimson seal, my steady voice saying, "I chose respect." It burned deeper now. And then, like an echo from nowhere, the words he had thrown at me returned, striking him with cruel irony. "Mother, you don't belong here anymore." Only this time the voice in his head turned the sentence back on him. "You don't belong here anymore, Daniel." The room seemed darker. His own home felt foreign. Lydia didn't sit beside him. Gregory and Marlene didn't shield him. He was alone. The following week he tried to work. He took a job at a warehouse, carrying boxes, sorting shipments. On the first day, his impatience boiled. "These instructions are pointless," he snapped at the supervisor. "Do the job or go home," the man replied flatly. By the third day, Daniel's temper erupted. A dropped pallet, a shouted curse, a shove against a coworker. The manager pulled him aside, face like stone. "You don't belong here." "Clean out your locker?" Those words hit him harder than the dismissal itself. He packed his things in silence, rage simmering but powerless. At night, he sat in the dim apartment, a single lamp casting shadows across peeling paint. Lydia spent her evenings at her parents' place. Gregory stopped taking his calls. Marlene no longer defended him. He opened the fridge, half empty. He opened the drawer, bills stacked without payment. The silence pressed in again, and with it the echo. "You don't belong here anymore." He buried his face in his hands. For the first time, there was no audience for his anger, no allies to clap when he demanded what wasn't his. There was only himself, the truth he had run from, and the consequences he had earned. From Sacramento, I didn't need cameras to know what was happening. Word traveled, as it always does. Daniel was unraveling. The people who pushed him forward now turned away, leaving him with the wreckage of his own pride. Do I pity him? Perhaps in some distant corner of my heart. But pity is not the same as forgiveness. This was his lesson, his first step toward understanding respect, if he chose to take it. And if not, well, the loneliness of his new life would teach him more than I ever could. The villa at Tahoe no longer echoed with arrogance or entitlement. Instead, it breathed with new life. Where Lydia once paraded through the living room, now wheelchairs rolled easily across polished floors. Where Gregory spilled wine with smug laughter, now veterans sat quietly, sipping coffee and trading stories of survival. The flagpole I had insisted on installing stood tall at the edge of the driveway. The American flag rippled in the mountain breeze, each snap of fabric a reminder of the men and women this place now sheltered. The dedication day was simple, without grandeur. A small crowd gathered on the lawn, men with worn jackets, women with steady eyes, families who carried invisible scars from wars most had forgotten. Mark stood beside me, holding a folder but not needing it. "You did this, Joanna," he said quietly. I shook my head. James did. I only finished what he started. The director of the foundation tapped the microphone. His voice carried clear across the crowd. Today we honor the gift of the Whitmore Villa. From this day forward, it will serve as a retreat and rehabilitation center for our veterans, a place of healing, a place of dignity. In memory of James Whitmore. The crowd applauded, not the loud cheer of spectacle, but the steady rhythm of gratitude. I stepped closer to the wooden sign they had unveiled by the gate, in memory of James Whitmore. The letters gleamed against the polished oak, simple, strong, enduring. A young man in uniform approached, his right sleeve pinned where an arm used to be. He offered me his left hand. "Ma'am, I never met your husband, but I wish I had." "This house will mean more than you know." I gripped his hand firmly. "He would have been proud to meet you." Inside, the villa looked different, yet familiar. The foundation had kept the bones, but restored the soul. The old armchair, once tossed aside, had been retrieved and reupholstered. The dining table now hosted long rows of seats, not for feasts of vanity, but for shared meals of belonging. In the hallway, laughter rang out, deep, hearty, unashamed. A man told a joke about boot camp. Another teased him about embellishing the details. For the first time in years, the villa laughed again. I walked to the back porch overlooking the lake. The water shimmered under the sun, calm as if it too had found peace. Emily joined me, slipping her arm through mine. "You see? The house has better company now," she said with a grin. I nodded, watching as two veterans helped each other down to the dock. It finally belongs to people who understand sacrifice. Emily looked at me, serious now. "And you, Aunt Jo, you've proved something. Family isn't about blood alone. It's about respect, about choosing who deserves a place in your life." I smiled faintly. "That's why James trusted you with the future. You helped me turn the villa into a home again." Behind us, the foundation director called out, "Lunch is served." Plates clattered, voices rose in friendly competition over who got the biggest slice of pie. I stayed by the railing a moment longer, breathing in the sound of belonging that once had been stolen. When I finally stepped down to join them, one of the older veterans lifted his glass of iced tea. "To James Whitmore," he said. "To James," they echoed. The clink of glasses was not the hollow toast of greed, but the true resonance of honor. I raised mine too, whispering under my breath, "We kept it safe, James." In the only way that mattered, the villa had been reborn, not as a prize, not as property, but as legacy. And standing there, surrounded by men and women who knew the weight of sacrifice, I felt the truth settle like sunlight on the lake. This place would never again be silent with arrogance. It would sing with dignity, as it was always meant to. The dock stretched quiet into the lake, the wood warm beneath me as the afternoon sun began its slow descent. I sat at the edge, shoes off, letting the water lap gently against the posts. The breeze moved across my hair, cool and steady, carrying with it the sound of laughter from the villa behind me. Voices rose, men telling stories, women chiming in, the kind of laughter that came from relief rather than vanity. The veterans had filled the house with life, not possession. Their joy reached the shoreline like music too honest to ignore. I whispered softly, not for them, but for myself. I kept it safe, in the only way that mattered. The flag rippled in the distance, its reflection broken into fragments across the shimmering water. For the first time since James passed, the villa no longer felt like a monument of grief. It was a gift, alive, serving those who knew the meaning of sacrifice. I glanced at the phone in my lap. A single message blinked across the screen. From Daniel, short, hesitant. "I will reach out when I am ready to be your son again." The words sat there, raw and uncertain. For years, he had only spoken to me with arrogance or contempt. Now, even in his broken pride, he left room for something else. I did not reply, not yet. Some lessons required silence. Some wounds needed time to sting before they could heal. I placed the phone face down on the dock and looked back across the lake. Behind me, Emily's voice called from the porch. "They're asking if you'll join for dinner." I turned, smiled faintly. "Tell them I'll be there soon." She nodded and disappeared back inside. The laughter rose again, stronger, like the house itself was breathing freer with every passing hour. I closed my eyes, hearing James's voice in memory, steady and sure. A home isn't wood and stone. It's what you protect inside it. Now I understood fully. Some things we keep because they carry the weight of memory. Some things we give because their value grows when shared. And some things, like pride, like greed, we let go because they teach us the difference. I dipped my hand into the cool water, ripples spreading outward until they faded into calm. Life was like that. Waves of conflict settling into stillness when met with courage. The villa behind me glowed with warm light. The veterans had gathered at the long dining table, hands clasped in gratitude before their meal. This was not the silence of loss, but the fullness of purpose. I stood, brushing dust from my skirt, and turned toward the villa. The dock creaked beneath my steps, the water lapping farewell. As I walked back across the lawn, I whispered one final truth, the kind only earned by surviving betrayal, by holding dignity against the storm. Honor cannot be stolen. It is guarded by courage. The laughter swelled, the flag waved, and the villa stood not as a possession, but as a legacy. Thank you for being part of this journey.